What's your definition of what the modern alpha male is supposed to look like? What do you think they're supposed to act like? We think about what they were in the 50s. We know what they were in the 60s. We can kind of look back and see what the 70s and 80s looked like, and even the 90s. But let's look at 2026. How do we define what the alpha male is? I had this conversation the other day with a younger client of mine who was in his mid 20s, and he is getting ready to graduate law school. And he's trying to figure out, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be an alpha male in today's society? Because he's like, I don't even want to ask women out because of all the bullshit and all the games that they're playing. And he doesn't know what authenticity looks like. And we said, and so we had this conversation. I told him, let's look back on ourselves and let's sit down and let's define, what do we think the modern alpha male is? Let's not worry about anybody else. Let's worry about ourselves. And this is some of the things that we came up with. And I want to see what you guys think and see if this is something you agree with, or you think there's more we need to add. Or is there something that we, is completely off track that I had this conversation with? So one of the things he said is the modern alpha male is confident, they're emotionally intelligent, and they have integrity. And those are pretty strong words when you think about it: confidence, emotional intelligence, and integrity. That's what a lot of men have had throughout the years. They've had confidence, they've had integrity, and the emotional intelligence, I think, is coming around even more than ever. And it's coming from men that are willing to put the work in. They're willing to put the work in their mental health. They're put into their physical health, of course, and we see them at the gyms and things like that. But that's the emotional intelligence, to be able to handle our emotions and understand situations so that we don't blow up. And we talked about what it's not. And it's not somebody who's toxic. It's not somebody who's arrogant. And it's not somebody who's hyper aggressive. Nobody wants arrogance. Nobody wants an asshole, and they're going to be. And there are always going to be men out there that are assholes and, don't know how to emotionally be intelligent and things like that. But when you look at the modern alpha male, they're a grounded leader. Through purpose and resilience, they create leaderships and people to follow them. I thought that was pretty impressive for my client to come up with that, to think about that. And he says he sees that all the time. In some of his mentors that he follows, he says, young or old, he goes, they have a purpose and they are resilient to everybody else. When you look at all the high achieving individuals that I work with, the millionaires and sometimes the billionaires, they're all resilient. They don't listen to the outside noise. Everybody thinks they're crazy. Absolutely. You have to be crazy to make that kind of money. And we all know it. They do things that we're not, or when I say we not, they're not, they do things that most people in society are not willing to do. So yeah, they are very resilient and they go through life with a purpose, whether it's to get from A to B or B to C, it doesn't matter. They have a purpose. So, those are alpha males. Those are the modern alpha male. Let's talk about continuous improvements. The continuous improvement for the alpha male today is through finance, mind, body, and relationship. Everybody's working hard to make that buck. Everybody wants to be at that millionaire status, so they're doing it. They're working on their minds. A lot of the high-achieving individuals that I come with, they're willing to put the work in so they can be better individuals for their families, for their spouses, for their wives, for their girlfriends, and from whoever else, even to be a better son or a better daughter. They work on their minds. They work on their bodies, and they're in the gym. They don't look like the fat 300-pound guy that's eating potato chips, on a weekend. They're out, they're being active, they're canoeing, they're kayaking, they're scuba diving, they're skydiving, and they're doing all the things that they want to do. And they're working on the relationships. They're looking how to communicate with their spouse. They're looking how to communicate with their partner. And that goes back to working on the emotional intelligence and in that category. Speaking of emotional intelligence, what is it? And how is it defined for the modern alpha male? For somebody who is 19 years old and coming up, or maybe somebody who's in their 20s or 30s. Maybe it's somebody that's in their 40s or 50s. It doesn't matter. What does a modern alpha male look like, and how do they define emotional intelligence? Somebody who masters their emotions, is calm under pressure, who's assertive, who can set boundaries, and who builds trust through vulnerability. I did another podcast that talked about vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And it was talking about men's mental health. And we need to be okay with being vulnerable. And vulnerable is okay. And as we're vulnerable, we can tell the stories about how we're vulnerable to allow other people to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. We talk about setting boundaries, and I've had another podcast that talked about being selfish and setting those boundaries. It is okay. And people think it's arrogance but the high achieving and the power male, He's going to set boundaries, and he's going to stick to those, and he's not going to tolerate any disrespect. He's not going to tolerate anybody putting him second. And so, yeah, that's a modern alpha male. And they're assertive. They know what's going on around them. They know what's going on in business. They know what's going on. They educate themselves. They want to better themselves. And so, yeah, they're assertive and creating, better situations for themselves. Absolutely, they're calling them under pressure. You get a girlfriend that's going to be erratic, they're going to get rid of her. They're not going to yell. They're not going to scream. They're just going to have the conversation and end it. And when they're in the boardroom, they're the ones sitting there calm, cool, and collective, and they're the ones that are listening versus speaking. So, yeah, they're becoming calm under pressure. And they know how to master their emotions because they're putting the work in, as we just talked about, with continuous improvement. It takes time, it takes work, and it takes effort to master your emotions. And when you get to that point, I think it was Jim Carrey that said, when you can get to a point where you don't give a fuck about what anybody else thinks, you're a very dangerous individual. And he's absolutely right. If you can master your emotions and not get upset in certain situations, you're going to be happier. You're going to live a lot longer, and you're not going to deal with as much stress as you think. The next thing that my client came up with is discipline. And he's absolutely right. Routines, discipline, not going out on a Tuesday night and drinking instead going to the gym, or reading and making sure that you're educating yourself so that you become a better person in the business world and in your relationships. Discipline means, continuous improvement. So these are all big circles that continuously go back. Discipline, setting boundaries, and making sure that you are putting yourself first. My client also talked about being authentic. Humility, humanity, and integrity. Pretty big words. And you know what? He's right. The modern alpha male needs to have humanity, humility, and integrity, and needs to believe in the things that he stands for, and he needs to stand up for what he believes in, and he needs to make sure that he's not backing down to a fight emotionally, physically, or whatever it is when he can truly believe in what he's doing. Purpose-driven. Let's talk about what purpose-driven means. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. If the individual wants to make $1 million, he's going to figure out how to do it. He's going to set that goal up here, and he's going to work backwards, and he's going to figure out what he wants to do. If he wants to have all these businesses and become a billionaire, he's going to figure out how to do it. He's with purpose. And sometimes purpose isn't driven by money. A lot of times purpose is driven by care. I know a lot of people that got into the medical field because the purpose was to help other people. My purpose of getting into counseling and becoming a therapist was to help high-achieving individuals know that it's okay to get help, that it's okay to talk, that it's okay to say that you need help. It's okay to say, I'm not okay. And that was my purpose, and I'm loving every day of it, and I am fulfilled. And I don't know, maybe I'm checking all the boxes for the alpha male or the modern alpha male. I sure think so, and I sure hope so. I hope my son is, and I hope all those that I surround myself are. And when we talk about those that we surround ourselves with, respectful in relationships, there's no games. We're selecting high-value partners. We're selecting somebody who's going to support us, who's going to be there when we're at our lows, and they're going to be there when we're at our highs. And when you talk about respectful relationships, I'm not talking about just in love. I'm talking about in business. If you can respect the person you're in business with, doesn't mean you have to agree with them or like them, but you respect them, you're going to get somewhere. If you're a lawyer, you always hopefully respect the opposing counsel. You respect the judge. So that's what I mean by, creating respectful relationships, high value partnerships. That's how you become successful, in business and in life. If you have a high value partner, such as a mentor that can help get you to the next level, that's fantastic. If you're coming to see me, I hope I have a respectful relationship with you and that you consider me high value to get you to the next level, to help you through your love relationships or your business relationships and more. There's no games, and your partner in your love life should bring you peace. And if they don't bring you peace, you need to really think about what are you doing? Why are you with them? And what is the end goal and what is the end game with that individual? Because if you're playing games or if they're playing games and you're playing games, you're not a high achieving individual. You're not a modern alpha male, because a modern alpha male doesn't put up with the bullshit that these little girls, and I say little girls for a reason, because they need to grow up, they need to mature and realize that if you want to hang out with a high value individual, they're going to put you in check. They're going to put you in your place. And a modern alpha male is going to do just that because he's not playing with any games. So In the comments below, let me know what's missing from this list. Did we forget everything? Did we forget anything, or did we forget anything? What do you think about this list? Do you agree with it? Is there something else that, you want to see added? Is there something else that, should be defined differently? Again, the modern alpha male starts at 18. It starts at 21. It starts at 30, 40, 50, 60. The modern male, or the modern alpha male, is up to us to define what it is. And it is up to us to define what the perfect alpha male looks like. And it's a gentleman. It is somebody who is respectful. It is somebody who is willing to put the work in and be a part of society. Because again, those things we listed, they're not toxic, they're not arrogant, and they're not hyper aggressive. Yeah, at the end of the day, the modern alpha male is exactly who you want to date, who you want to marry, and who you want to do business with. If you don't agree with me, tell me in the comments below. I am Chris Kourtakis. I am a licensed counselor. I do work with high-achieving individuals. So the modern alpha male is exactly who I work with. If you want to become a high-value individual and a modern alpha male, reach out to me. Let's talk about it. Let's see what we need to do to put the work in. And if you don't think you're there, then let's figure out why you're not there. If you think you are there, then let's talk about that too. But again, I work with high-achieving individuals and power couples, and the modern alpha male is something that comes up on a regular basis, and I would love to know how you define it. So comment below, hit the like button if you like this video, share it if you're somebody that you think will benefit from it, and as always, please hit that subscribe button, as I would love to share additional content with you as it comes out. So I'll see you in the next video, and what do you think is the definition of a modern alpha male?